It Back Nation. What is good? It is DJ Eastwood, running back Philly. No frauds, no fanboys, no intros, even though the Sixers were frauds tonight. This is Trill Bro Dude from the You Know Ball podcast. He's going to help me complain about what just happened. What's going on, man? Tell the people who you are for those that don't know. Tell the people who you are about the podcast and everything.
So I'm Trill Bro Dude. You can follow me at Trill Bro Dude. You Know Ball podcast. It started as a Sixers podcast. We mainly focused on the team, and then since has grown into a bit more. So we talk about the Sixers a lot, but we mostly talk about NBA trades, which is our big thing. Slop. We're in the middle of slop season right now. And so it's been a very entertaining week or two over on the podcast. And, kind of all culminating with the Kyrie Irving trade today to the Mavericks. But, very disappointed after that Sixers game for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about some of that around the NBA stuff towards the end of this. But, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for joining me. Before we get to any of the fun stuff that happened in the NBA, something not fun just happened. The Philadelphia 76ers lose to the New York Knicks 108-97. And I'll just start it off by saying, giving my initial reaction to the game, and then you can give yours, and then we'll go from there. For the Sixers to come out hot, come out with high energy, come out with good defense in the first half of the first quarter, 75% of the first quarter, are up by 21 points. And the Knicks couldn't buy a bucket. I know that had part to do with it, and then they started to make runs and get hot at certain points in the game. But you're up by 21 points in the first quarter. I've been saying the biggest thing with this team is surviving the non-Embiid minutes. Joel Embiid sits down towards the end of the first quarter, and in 3 minutes, they blow an entire 21-point lead, and it is a 3-point game. Couple minutes into the second quarter, Montrezl Harrell. I lost my headphones again. There we go. Sorry, I've been having a headphone issue. Now I can't hear myself. Come on. Where are you at? There we go. All right. Montrezl Harrell at the end of the first quarter was a minus 15 in 1 minute. 1 minute, he was a minus 15. It's unreal. And then Doc had to accept the fact that wasn't working and had to play Paul Reed the rest of the game, which didn't end up making a huge difference. But I feel like if you didn't blow an entire 21-point lead in a couple of minutes, you stood a chance of maintaining a lead throughout the rest of this game. But that's not the main reason they lost. That's one of the things that I hated about it. And then the fourth quarter, same story for me in a lot of Sixers losses this season. Out-hustled, out-rebounded, lack of discipline, turnovers. For Jericho Sims there towards the end to get an offensive rebound on his own free throw and put it back in, it was like, okay. I mean, they cut it to 8 points with a little over a minute left. I've seen crazier things happen, and they shot themselves in the foot again. So a disappointing loss. I don't think I'm going to overreact totally, but definitely a disappointing loss in a game that they should have won. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me because, when we get around this time in February and March, I kind of stop taking the losses to heart as much. But it definitely has shown the same kind of fundamental issues that plague the team for sure, which is mainly the rebounding thing, which has now been a 2-year adventure of the team not having... Honestly, even when Joel is out there, Joel not actively participating in rebounding, Tobias being horrible at boxing out, not hustling for rebounds. PJ Tucker, one of the reasons why they acquired Tucker and Melton was to help with these kind of things. And that really has not solved the issue by any means. That's the most frustrating part to me of this game. I was frustrated over the backup center thing. Obviously, Montrez played horribly again, which I've said time and time again. The only time you can trust Montrez to have a decent game is when you're playing against the Charlotte Hornets or the Washington Wizards or one of the mid to bad teams that he played against or played for in the past. seems to only be playing well in the games that truly don't matter at all. And in any sort of regular competition, whether it's against basically a non-lottery team, Montrez is going to be virtually unplayable. He's proven that time and time again this season. Paul Reed, love B-ball Paul, but it's just like between the fouling, the lack of consistency on offense, he does help us regarding the rebounding issue. He's one of the best competitive rebounders in the NBA, but there are a lot of other warts in his game that make it very clear that he's not going to be the solution at backup center, especially for this team. So I am kind of like, I can't really be too mad because they've won 20. Coming into tonight, they were 22-5 in their last 27 games. They've won some really competitive games. They've won a lot of close games. They've won games against good competition. And they tend to do this thing still where they don't really get up for certain games. But it's troubling only because it's the second game in a week that they have blown a 20-point lead. And with the Sixers history and with all of the same things plaguing the team, especially in a night like tonight where, like, honestly, kind of everyone looked like shit. Like, I know that they were winning early and it looked great, but everyone looked a little bit discombobulated tonight. It was kind of a something across the board. Like, Embiid was not good in the second half, despite the fact that he was like a plus 20 on the game or whatever. So overall, it's only concerning because it's becoming a pattern. But overall, I don't know. I can't really care too much about a February loss when the team is, playing as well as it has been recently. And also when the competition is better, they have shown that they can get up for those big games. And there's 82 games, and it's just like, I don't know. And and once again, like we talked about it, like the biggest problem that they have is backup center, right? Well, what's the one thing that they've been leaking to the media all week? Leaking to the media, we're getting a backup center. Regardless of what happens this week, the Sixers will have a new backup center in a week. Whether it solves the problems, I don't know. But the fact that they are at least willing to admit and address it is a positive sign to me.
Yeah, I guess, like, how did they not address that in the offseason, Or did Daryl Morey actually think that Montrezl Harrell was the prototypical or the solution at backup center? They released Charles Bassey, who's not really getting – I think he's in the G League now, in San Antonio's G League affiliate. But so, I can't really harp too much on the release of Charles Bassey, because it's not like he's out there getting regular rotation minutes in San Antonio. He plays like once in a blue moon and has a bunch of rebounds that everyone freaks out about. But the more I see him not playing in San Antonio, I can't really continue to harp on that. I was just wondering, like, what did they actually do in the offseason to fix the backup center situation? Or did they really think Montrezl Harrell was the answer, And I overhyped it, but my friend Romp, right when it happened, he said, "This is terrible. Doc's going to play him a ton. Doc's going to play him a ton." He got fired in LA basically for playing him a ton in that playoff series. And he predicted it on the money. And I wasn't listening to you back then, but I'm judging by, some of the things you've said since I've been listening to you, I would assume that you kind of called that on the money. Also, the Doc Rivers Montrezl Harrell thing. I just can't figure out what they did in the offseason, and now before the trade deadline, they have to try to fix the backup center spot.
Yeah, so I actually had a tweet a month before Montrez was signed by the Sixers, and I said the Sixers are going to sign Montrezl Harrell to a minimum, and it's going to be terrible. I literally called it from a mile away, basically the second that it was obvious that he wasn't going back to the Hornets. But I did say it like this when he first was signed. I said, as an innings eater in the regular season against, like I said, not great competition, I'm sure he will be fine. But I also said, I think that you should make moves with the playoffs in mind, because we know that the Sixers can be a good regular season team. We know the Sixers can win 50 games. We know this. The history has shown that they are one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the East every single year when they have relatively decent health. So no one really cares about that. And it is important to have inning eaters in the regular season to keep your stars fresh for the playoffs. And that was the thought process in my head of why they made the signing was, okay, we're going to roll out there and we're going to have PJ Tucker. We're going to have Paul Reed, and we're going to have Montrezl Harrell. And between the three of them, we should be able to find a regular season solution to keep Joel Embiid as fresh as possible for the playoffs. We won't have to play in big minutes. He won't have to play a ton of games. He's going to be more focused, less on winning the MVP and more on getting to the playoffs. Well, that's not necessarily really been the case. He's still playing pretty large number of minutes. He isn't missing a ton of games. And Montrez, while Paul Reed has regressed in some departments, he's fouling 8 times per 36 minutes this year, which is just completely unsustainable for a guy that needs to play real minutes in the regular season. And then PJ Tucker being completely unplayable at the 5, where he has been somewhat playable in his Houston and Milwaukee days at the 5 in the past, is definitely kind of part of the reason why the Montrez thing looks so bad in retrospect. But the reality is you can't really get a lot of good centers for the veterans minimum. I think we got a little bit spoiled with Andre Drummond last year. Drummond being the most competent backup that we've probably had in the Embiid era was a little bit of fool's gold in terms of what the center market can really bring you in free agency if you only have access to the veterans minimums at that point. The real issue is that they spent the biannual exception on Daniel House, who is not even an NBA player. He's not in the rotation. He's at best a 12th man, like a guy who you could just occasionally throw out there. And if they had used those resources to get a backup center, then the conversation might be a little bit different. But now I'm looking at it more like there are a few guys that are out there this week, and we know that this is proven to not work. So in order to resolve the backup center issue, they need to look at what they can get now. And Morey has done this in the past where he diagnoses problems with the team halfway through the season, and then he goes out and he gets whoever. But the large majority of guys we probably would have got would not have helped us any more than Montrez. But if you had not used that on Daniel House, you would probably be in a better position because you at least would have had something to offer to a backup center that could have potentially come in and, really help the team.
Yeah, that Daniel House signing for that was an L for Daryl Morey. That was a loss. He was really just in a had blinders on and could only see former Houston Rockets players that used to catch and shoot off of James Harden assists, and he was just get every player that ever played with James Harden and we'll sign him. And they were like, but he's not very good anymore. He's like, just sign him. He's going to be good again. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the Daniel House one. That one was crazy.
He's a wing and he's athletic, and that's what we kind of thought we needed. And while that is true, he's not particularly very good at basketball.
Basketball players age quickly. The difference between 25 and 35 is massive. And if you were great in 2016, that doesn't mean you can still do it in 6 years later, 7 years later, whatever it was. So.
Even with House, he only had 1.5 good seasons. So the large majority of his career showed that he's more of a fringe rotation player than a guy you can rely on. But once again, they just didn't have a lot to work with. If they had went a different route with the MLE instead of going PJ Tucker and got Bruce Brown or something, or someone of that ilk, then you might have been able to kind of not really care as much about the Daniel House thing. But the issue is that you signed PJ, and while PJ has had up and down results so far, you gave the entire mid-level exception for him, and that is your one resource to truly improve the team. And I don't know. I would say that it's been more of a miss than a hit, but we're hoping that he can maybe turn things up for the playoffs.
Yeah, the backup center spot. Yeah, you're right about the Andre Drummond thing. We got spoiled, and then our standards are that for a backup center. We need Andre Drummond back, or we need somebody that can do what Andre Drummond did. And at the time, I don't know if he is anymore. Again, he's not really getting rotation in Chicago, whether it's matchups or just how they like to go small when Vucevic sits or something like that. But
no, that's my buddy who's a Bulls fan said that's the exact same thing. They go small when Vucevic, and it's not even Drummond's been fine when he can play. It's just that Donovan doesn't like to go.
Yeah, big. He has games where in 4 minutes he has 5 points and 9 rebounds.
Yeah,
off the bench. So yeah, but I think at the time he was a starting level center probably at 27, 28 years old when we had him backing up Joel Embiid. So we were lucky there. Realistically, a backup center, it's just not going to be a star NBA player. It just has to be an athletic rebounder who can defend a little bit and survive the game for 12 minutes. And I just can't figure out how it was that hard to find. You see teams like the Orlando Magic or whoever that have 10 6'11" dudes on their roster. It blows my mind that this Sixers team has one player taller than 6'9", and it's Joel Embiid. One single player taller than 6'9" on an NBA roster. That's wild to me. Where's the 7-footers at? Where's all the big dudes? I don't get it.
I also think that this is something that we've kind of talked about ad nauseum on my podcast, which is that the thing is when you get to the playoffs, a lot of backup centers, like, because everyone will say, well, Drummond can't play in the playoffs. And then I'm like, well, there's 0 backup centers who can play in the playoffs. Like,
yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, even starting centers get played off the court. Like, Steven Adams is a good NBA player, and he could not play in the Timberwolves series last year. Like, that's just kind of the reality of what most bigs are in the modern NBA when you get to the playoffs, and it's a lot of wings who can shoot, create, guards who are playing bigs off the court constantly. And I find that there are a few options out there now, I think, that would be able to stay on the court in the playoffs that the Sixers could get. And I think that the thought process behind getting the guys that they got was most teams, like I put it like this. If you look at our rivals in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Cavs, those 3 teams specifically, if you look at those teams, they all have power forwards who can shift down a position to center in the playoffs. The Sixers got PJ Tucker thinking that they could do that, and that's proven not to really be the case. But that is an advantage that we have tried in the past with Al Horford. Horford had one of the worst years of his career. He looked washed. He's bounced back since he's left, that he went to Oklahoma City and Boston. And, like, you could put Mobley at the 5. You could put Horford at the 5. You could put Giannis at the 5. The Sixers don't have an option that is a small ball option that they could really rely on. And I think that that's something that this thing with the backup center thing has now given them a disadvantage in the regular season and in the postseason. Because we've seen how many fucking backup centers on the Sixers we get to the playoffs. And I know a lot of those guys were not good players by the time they were on the Sixers. DeAndre Jordan was washed. Greg Monroe was washed. Boban, whoever you rolled out there. But the thing is, at a certain point, you do have to realize that when your best player is off the court in Joel Embiid, your team's just not going to be nearly as good. Mm-hmm. You need to basically, as you said, survive those minutes, figure out an alternative. And I do think that the thought process behind getting a PJ Tucker isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just that PJ's just not the same player he was. And he can't play that small ball 5 and go 5 out and have that advantage. They need to find someone who can. And I think that is the number one priority at this deadline, is finding a 4 who can play the 5, or a 5 that is athletic and mobile enough to stay on the court in the playoffs. And there are 2 guys that I think of that when I bring that up.
Yeah, we'll talk about that definitely. PJ had a good defensive game against Jokic. So I guess it probably has to do with matchups for him, but guys that are a lot bigger and more athletic, him just being 6'5", it doesn't matter how hard he tries. He's only 6'5", I remember the Porzingis game against when he was in Washington, I think. I don't even know where Porzingis is at this point, but he was just shooting over PJ Tucker like he was a lawn chair in a driveway. And I was like, this is what we're doing at backup center. He's just 6'5". That just is what it is. You can't get around that. So yeah, the backup center thing is it's something that, hopefully we try our best to fix at the deadline, but at least it's something that they are basically admitting that they have to fix, not like, well, Doc's going to figure it out, or I'm going to roll with Trez and this is what it's going to be. At least we know that I think they're going to try to make a move. Do you think it has to be somebody that Daryl Morey thinks that Doc Rivers will play? You know what I mean? Like
That's true. Yeah, it's important to consider, because
I see players like Jericho Sims. I see players like these dudes that come up that are just young and can jump out of the gym, and it's just, is Doc going to play him, or does it have to be a 31-year-old veteran that he trusts? Trust is everything with Doc Rivers. You know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, no, you're definitely right there. I would say, I mean, look, I think that any decision that is made at this deadline, Doc will have input. He has input on the roster. And if there is a guy that Morey, I'll put it like this. If there's a guy that Morey thinks can really move the needle and is a viable, playable backup big, whether it's a 4 or 5, whatever it is, he needs to trade Montrezl Harrell if he thinks that there's any chance that Doc could play Montrezl over him, because we know the Montrezl thing never works in the playoffs. He's historically been one of the worst playoff performers of the past decade. Like, it's every time he's on the court, his team bleeds points. He's actually been a pretty positive regular season player, and he's not even really there anymore due to the kind of the decline in athleticism, the things that you talked about. So I think that there are two guys that that I'm sure we'll get into that I really think would be fantastic when it comes to this. And I think that if they are available and they're at a reasonable price and Morey can acquire them, there will have to be some sort of conversation, or else Doc Rivers will be gone after the year. Like, it's just like we can't do the same things over and over and expect different results.
Right. I think he's going to be gone at the end of the year anyway. If I really had to predict it, when people ask me if I had to, like, if it was a bet that I had to make, I would say something deep into the playoffs, decision-wise, is going to happen within a 7-game series that's going to get Doc Rivers up out of here. I've been thinking that this whole season. Kind of predicted it last season, but then we get a new version of James Harden, or a more in shape, energized, bouncy version of James Harden, and Maxey year 3, and DeAnthony Melton. So the teams, some things happen, and I'm like, all right, maybe it's not, but I just wouldn't be shocked if they fall short and Doc Rivers does get fired at the end of this season. I hope they give him. I hate saying give him what he needs, because it has to be, again, it's like such a specific player, because it has to be a player that he trusts and that he plays. But I would love for them to give him what he needs and him go win a championship with the Sixers. But we'll just see if it happens. Tyrese Maxey in this game was interesting to me, that most of the fourth quarter, the end of the fourth quarter, when you needed scoring, I think Tyrese Maxey wasn't on the floor. And then Doc Rivers puts Tyrese Maxey in the game with 1 minute and 40 seconds left. And he is aggressive with the ball, gets fouled, goes to the free throw line, gets the lead down to 8 with a little bit over 1 minute. And they ultimately failed, but they forced a turnover right after that. I just can't see why Tyrese Maxey wasn't in the fourth quarter. I know it's the Anthony Melton is a two-way player, but this whole Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench thing was supposed to be it helps Doc stagger him. I guess it gives him moments in a game where he's the featured player on the court. But if he's only going to get 22 minutes in a game, 23 minutes in this game, he was 4 for 8. I mean, I just can't figure it out. I know he was a minus a lot. The whole bench was minus 20 plus. But what do you think about Tyrese Maxey coming off the bench? Do you like it? Because I hated it when it first started, because I thought when James Harden got on this team last year, Tyrese Maxey's game went to a new level with on the floor with James. And then we start this season, Tyrese Maxey's averaging 25, 26 points per game the first couple of games of the season alongside James Harden. Everybody gets injured. They all come back from injury. Maxey comes back from injury after a month and a half off the bench. Then he's starting. Then he has a couple of bad games and he's back on the bench. I don't know if I like this Tyrese Maxey off the bench thing. I think he's a great number 3, and I think he's best when he's beside James and Joel. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I thought Maxey was terrible tonight. I love Maxey with all my heart. I thought that he played a really, really bad game tonight, and he's had a few recently. He's literally my favorite player to watch on the team. I've said in the past, I got a lot of shit from Sixers fans last year when Donovan Mitchell was available, and I said, look, I love Maxey, and I hope that he's a Sixer forever. But if you want a realistic upgrade, what Donovan Mitchell was in Utah is probably the max capped out ceiling of what Tyrese Maxey can be as an NBA player. And if your goal is to win a title and contend, then you should probably explore those kind of trades. Now, I don't want to trade him because, like I said, he's my favorite player to watch. We drafted him. I loved him pre-draft. He's been my guy forever. But there has been certain holes in his game that have been a little bit exposed. And I think part of it does do with the fact that he is coming off the bench now because he's not like, I've said this time and time again. I think that people see scorer and they say 6 man. Yep. When historically the most successful six men in NBA history have actually not been just scorers, but also great playmakers. Manu Ginobili, Lou Williams, guys that come off the bench and can be instant offense, aren't just guys that come off the bench and just give you 20 in a game. They're guys who can run a pick and roll. They're guys who can orchestrate an offense. And historically speaking, and to this point in his career, Maxey has not been that guy. Maxey is more of an off-ball threat. He is more of a catch-and-shoot threat. He is more of one of the greatest guys at attacking at closeouts in the NBA. Now, having said all that, it is a little bit of a clunky fit because of the defense, for sure. Like that is the one part where I can understand why you might want to split up those two, because Melton provides you with, more just everything on the defensive end, to be completely honest.
Rebounding, perimeter defense. Everything.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I do wonder how much more it would be survivable for a Harden Maxey backcourt and I actually think Tobias's defense has been fantastic this year overall. PJ, it comes and it goes, but he has certain games but if they really had like defensive wing specialists that could, unlike Thibault, they could stay on the court offensively. Like if you were to take a Jaden McDaniels from Minnesota or a Dorian Finney-Smith who was traded today, just like off-ball menace guys that kind of can get into passing lanes, that can kind of, turn the ball over more often, can lock up on the perimeter when they switch out there, that might be a little bit more feasible. But with the way that the Sixers' current roster is constructed, I understand why they want to have more defense out there. But I do worry that it might stunt a little bit of Maxey's development as an offensive player, because I think what his best role is playing off of those stars. That he is the best when he has the ability to do that. But I think part of it is the coaching staff, but also part of it is Maxey, because when you put Maxey out there with those guys, as great as it sounds in theory, we've seen time and time again, if he's not directly involved in an action, he kind of gets passive. Yep. He kind of tends to drift over into the corner and he's fine with shooting spot ups and whatever. When in reality, we should be running more actions with Maxey with the ball when they're on the court, with Maxey coming off of screens. Like I've been a big proponent of turning Maxey into a movement shooter and just trying to use, we tried to use George Niang as a movement shooter this year. And Niang's one of the best spot up guys in the NBA. He cannot shoot off movement at all. We have not run pin downs for Maxey. We have not run any sort of actions off of the ball for Maxey that is not just a basic dribble handoff with Joel Embiid. Right. And I think that kind of thing could definitely get him more involved and take the Sixers offense from being like a good offense to a virtually unstoppable offense. And that's the one thing that is a little bit frustrating to me. The starters versus whatever doesn't really matter to me. Like, does he come off the bench? Does he start? I just want to see him playing starters minutes and closing. But it is possible that we have now got to the point where there are going to be certain matchups where it is just better to play bigger and play Melton and play defensive guys. And that's possible that we get to the playoffs and we see that. But we also know that Maxey has had he's in his first 2 years, he had at least 3 iconic playoff moments I can think of. And there are going to be matchups where I think that Maxey's foot speed and his ability to play off the ball with the stars would be massively beneficial to the Sixers offense. And I think that they should just be open to being flexible at all times with Maxey and with Melton and who plays what, because as much as I wanted the 3-guard lineup to work, the results so far have been really bad from the 3-guard lineup. And I was really disappointed by that, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been saying the actions for Maxey thing for a while, because, when you think about how quick he is at getting to the rim and how much he can score in ISO situations, because that's really the only opportunities he gets to score. He's just put out there, and it's like, okay, again, I think Doc Rivers thinks that he is a shot creator, and I just think he needs to be in situations to help him get to the rim. And he's so quick getting to the rim. Imagine Tyrese Maxey coming off of, double screens and whatever else, a lot of creative things that it would take his game to another level. And it just seems like whether he's on with Harden and Embiid or he's off the bench and playing with some kind of mixed matched bench lineup, it just seems like the only scoring opportunities he has to try to create for himself. It doesn't seem like the offensive game plan has really ever, try to just put him in scoring situations by
Yeah.
like play design. So
And
that
and
is
and
frustrating.
and to be fair, the Sixers system in general really lacks movement. It doesn't
Yeah.
like guys kind of tend to like we have our bread and butter actions, which are, Joel ISO in the post.
Yep.
We have the pick and roll with Harden running it. We have some dribble handoff stuff with Joel, not quite as much as before, but like the fact that there is such a lack of movement in the Sixers offense kind of is not super beneficial. And honestly, the only time I view it as having any sort of movement off of the ball, any sort of actions, is when the bench units are in,
Yeah.
which is so frustrating to me because it's like
Uh-huh.
you're running all of these like staggered screens and pin downs and all this stuff, but never when the stars play. And it's like, I understand that the pick and roll is super effective, but you have to have versatility to your offense to keep teams guessing. And like, honestly, I'm actually less worried about the offense in the playoffs. I'm more worried about the defense. And
Yeah.
Maxey's a big part of that. Maxey's defense has not been better; it's been worse
No.
this year.
Yeah.
And I think that he really needs to kind of take a step up. It's not only like, and the one thing is like everyone always talks about how small he is, and it's like there are small defenders in the NBA that like Emmanuel Quickley is a good example. Like
Yeah.
Emmanuel Quickley is like a pretty competent defender. Like he's not getting bullied on the ball. He's a smart team defender, like all this stuff. Like Maxey is not only small, but he makes a ton of errors pretty frequently in a game. Like tonight, there was a perfect example of Jalen Brunson bringing the ball up with Evan Fournier, I believe, was standing in the corner. It might have been Quentin Grimes. I can't remember. But Maxey rotates off of his guy in the corner, comes up when there was already Melton blocking off the paint for Brunson, and just leaves open the corner three-point shooter, and he hits the three. Like, there's way too many mental errors at this point in his career for me to think that, like, the defense in the playoffs isn't going to be an issue. So I understand having multiple different options. It would be really, once again, it would be really nice if we just had,
Yeah, I totally agree. I've seen Maxey, make communication errors a lot. I think I really started to notice it this season. I think maybe I've just been so high on his offense for a couple of years. One that I remember that I see a lot actually when he's on the court with Montrezl Harrell. His assignment will drive baseline, and Harrell rotates over or Niang rotates over, whoever it is playing there. Paul Reed rotates over, and Maxey fails to rotate back to that player's offensive player, and he's just wide open under the rim. I've seen it a couple times, and I'm like, but he's young and he's worked on a lot of things offensively. I think maybe in this upcoming offseason, that'll probably be his main focus to, you know what I mean, get better at communication and what you're supposed to do defensively to rotate and switch and help off ball and all those things. So,
and
we'll see.
Joel playing with Joel can cover up a lot of your mistakes. I'll say that much.
Oh,
Like
absolutely. There's so many times guys get beat and Joel just pins the ball on the backboard. Like, and then you don't think about what the lapse was that got the guy the layup because Joel blocked the shot. Yeah.
I mean, we saw it we're seeing it with Seth Curry right now. Like Seth Curry is, he's a little bit older now than he was when he was in Philly, but like he was in the regular season, at least, was a solid enough defensive player that he could survive because Joel cleaned up so many messes on the back line. And now it's like in Brooklyn, like he's like virtually unplayable on defense.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at George Niang in 9 minutes had a goose egg over 5, over 4 from 3. I think he was over in the last game against the Orlando Magic also, or one of those games, maybe the one that they lost on Monday night. But is Niang a playoff level rotational player? And especially too when I see Doc put him and Trez on the floor together at the 4 and the 5. I mean, God, it's a layup line, And again, for bigs, he doesn't have many options for backup centers and power forwards. But those two together, it's just a layup line. But I think the more I see of George Niang, I'm like, yeah, when he's hot and he gives you 18 points off the bench because he was 5 for 7 from 3, that's cool. But then you get these games where, he's not giving you much of anything. I guess he has to be a rotation player in the playoffs. I mean, they don't have, many more options unless something really happens at this trade deadline to shake things up. But what do you think about George Niang and like maybe the rest of some of those bench players that are probably going to be playing in the playoffs, the 8th man, 9th man type of role?
Well, Niang is kind of his value is entirely tied to the shot falling. Like obviously on offense, he's like I said, one of the best spot up shooters in the NBA. I think he was shooting like 42.5% on high volume from three coming into the night. But defensively, we know he's slow. We know that he can play. He's a smart defender, but he doesn't have the tools to be a good
Yeah.
defender. And that is, and tonight honestly was not even a smart defender. He was fouling. He was honestly another terrible game from Niang. Is he a playoff level rotation player? Not one you can rely on. I would say he probably is more of a spot minute guy in the playoffs. Someone that you can put in there for 10 minutes and hope that he's hitting his threes and keeping the ball moving and surviving in certain defensive matchups. Like I think that there are certain teams that he just probably can't play against in the playoffs. Like
Oh yeah, for sure.
probably can't play
Toronto Raptors
or the Celtics. Like I mean,
Celtics.
a team, one team you might be able to get away with it is the Bucks, only because the Bucks really lack a lot of guys that have the on the ball dribble like creation to just kind of like exploit Niang in space. Like Niang's actually played like weirdly had one game where he played like competent defense on Giannis. I'm not saying that's sustainable, but they just don't really have like the horses to kind of make a guy like Niang completely unplayable on defense. And I think if they did upgrade that center position, it certainly would help him because he can't play with Montrez. Like it's just
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, they like amplify each other's weaknesses.
sure.
You can't have them both out there.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, the recent history last year before when he was in Utah, when he was in Philly, has shown he can't play deep into the playoffs. So like once again, the options that they have right now aren't great, but the thing that they have been sending to reporters and telling people is we want to improve if possible the backup wing in that Daniel House spot, in the George Niang spot, and then also the backup center. So like I'm just going to throw his name out there because I've been kind of teasing it the whole time. But Jared Vanderbilt's someone that they've been tied to all season. I'm sorry, all week. And he was someone that I've been saying for a while I feel like would be the kind of ideal fit for what they need. He is a very athletic four who can play small ball five in spot minutes. He can defend down to sometimes the two, usually the three. And he's a really good rebounder, great athlete, and he is has really good feel on both ends. Like he's basically, when we got Melton, we're like, oh, this is like what Thibault provides up, but with playable offense.
Yeah,
he's essentially the big version of that, and that's like he can provide secondary rim protection. He can really help the Sixers kind of with that added element of athleticism, length, speed, all the stuff that we've been lacking, and he's like kind of low key a good passer for a straight up four. So like he is kind of the ideal fit and the upgrade over the end. The one issue with him is that the shot is just it's not really there. Like he is a shooter who doesn't shoot, or as a shooter, he only shoots like 1-3 per game, and he only makes it at like a 34 point clip. And before this year, he never shot because he was playing basically a traditional big role when he was playing with Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota because Towns can space the floor. So long story short here, a guy like Vanderbilt would be the perfect addition that would solve a lot of our issues, I think. I don't know if he's gettable at this deadline, but it would certainly be nice to have an alternative to Niang, and also might be able to play with Joel, and then when Joel sits as well. So that's the kind of guy that I'm looking for at this deadline, and I was really excited to see that they were interested in him because we've been talking about him for weeks. So
it'd be nice if they did something like that. I think of Vanderbilt as like a maybe a smarter Paul Reed. I don't know, for lack of better words. Like
basically Paul Reed if he didn't foul all the time,
exactly,
and had better feel in terms of passing and in terms of where to be on the court.
Yeah. So like with this game, this loss to the Knicks, it's crazy. Like we've had some very highs and some very lows in just a couple of days. After the Denver Nuggets game, it's like, wow, we can compete with the best teams in the NBA. We can beat the best teams in the NBA. I think we matched up well against the Denver Nuggets, and then you run into some more difficult matchups. The Orlando Magic again, 10, 6, 11 dudes that can run and rebound. So that was the Orlando Magic are a bad matchup for a lot of teams. They beat the Boston Celtics 3 times this year. And then this Knicks game, it's like we again we do play down to competition, and we play up to competition. But do you take this Knicks loss as like a serious thing? Does this tell you anything about the team going into the playoffs? And does it tell you like, oh my God, the way that we lost this game, we definitely have to do something at the trade deadline, or we're going to look exactly like we look tonight in the playoffs, and it's going to be a second round exit if they don't get something done at the trade deadline. You know what I mean?
Well, two things. One, I've kind of felt this way about the team all season. Like, I felt like we knew the Montrez thing wasn't going to work in the playoffs. We knew that we needed a reliable kind of like the thing that I really like about a guy like Vanderbilt is like he can play that big spot, that 5 spot, but he also is versatile enough and athletic enough that he can play the 3 or the 4. He's mainly played the 4. And I've always felt like that's the kind of Swiss Army knife guy that they need for this team, because I feel like I feel like offensively they're kind of going to be fine. Like, I know that they have guys that are like Thibault and Tucker that are offensively limited. Who knows if Thibault's even on the team? But I've always felt like this team, when we get to the playoffs, could just use another guy that can do the things like the rim protector thing is something I've been talking about all season. And it's like, we need a second rim protector, and not having that has left just completely vulnerable when Embiid isn't on the court. And then it's even better if you have a 4 who can also protect the rim, which PJ Tucker used to be able to do somewhat, but he can't do anymore. So, like, I've kind of felt this way, that they needed to make at least 1 upgrade, if not 2 upgrades at the deadline, and try to use, they don't have a ton to trade, which is the unfortunate part. But in reality, Morey makes a trade every single year. So I know that people are like, Morey's not going to do anything. And it's like, there has not been a year Morey has been a GM where he did not make a trade at the trade deadline. Is it going to make a difference? I don't know, but he definitely will make a move, whether it's a small one or a sizable one. I'm not sure. But long story short here, I do think that if they don't get out of the second round, I don't know if it's even necessarily a failure of the team. Like, if they didn't make it out of the second round all those years before, like they did, like with the Hawks series, this is a different Eastern Conference. Like, it would be the first year that if they do lose in the second round, that it might just be the 3 best teams in the NBA were in the Eastern Conference. Like, it's possible that just Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly are the 3 best teams, and someone has to lose. So I do think that's part of the reason why getting that 1 seed is so important. And I don't think they're going to get it because their schedule is brutal down the stretch.
Yeah.
But like, I do think that if they do lose in the second round this year, I'm obviously going to be pissed and disappointed. And who knows, it could be the end. Like, you can't lose in the 6th round like 5 or 6 straight years and just have everything be fine. Like eventually it will wear on Embiid. It will wear on everyone. And I'm not trying to make excuses right now, but like, if you lose to the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round and then they go on to win the finals, like the Raptors did that year, it's different than when you're losing to the Hawks and the Heat and those kind of years. So, like, I guess my thing is it's just a different context than what the East has been in the past.
Yeah, for sure. But I do think that would still be a major disappointment, just because we thought for a couple years, and it was, we had a major glaring issue, and that was a 6'11" point guard that won't shoot the ball and try to spread the floor and adapt or change his game at all to try to help the team. And then you finally, that's over. You get James Harden. You get James Harden on a season where he got a full off season of working out and getting in shape and getting his elevation back on his shot, which, by the way, tonight I think was another James Harden hangover game. So we've had 2 out of 3 of the last games now have been James Harden hangover games. After the Eagles NFC Championship game, clearly a James Harden hangover game, and then a Sunday game. Like, I know there wasn't a
Sunday game. It was close enough to the daytime that you're like, 6 p.m. It's in New York. He's probably out with his boys in Manhattan last night.
He didn't have. I can see it clearly. He doesn't have any elevation on his shot, and he goes 0 for 4 from 3. And it's a James Harden hangover game. It is what it is. I know people, when I say that, people are like, well, that you say that like that's an okay thing, and NBA players shouldn't be doing this or that. You just have to live with NBA players. It's what they are.
The reality of it.
Yeah, they get paid $200 million. he does what he wants. He had flights, he had traveling schedules in Houston around like his favorite nightclubs. Like, yeah, that shouldn't happen, but he was so good when he wanted to be good that they just lived with it. They're like, we're gonna hopefully get the 36 point per game James Harden when we need him the most, and that's what it is. So I think he definitely does that. I think he looked a little bit gassed tonight, like he looked on Monday night, which is why I'm just not too worried about this loss. I saw what they can look like well rested against the Denver Nuggets when they play up the competition and they're taking the game seriously. Madison Square Garden, New York Knicks, I think they should take that game seriously. And I think Joel Embiid took it seriously. He was just kind of getting his ass kicked on the boards a lot. The Knicks have some young athletic rebounders. Again, it's what, we tend to struggle with. But yeah, James Harden hangover game, I think for sure.
Well, like, what are the big games we've played recently? Because I've been saying time and time again, like, this might be part of the team's DNA. This might be part of the Stars' DNA. Like, that they just kind of are going to have these games like that are kind of stinkers, to be honest. Like, like Harden, Embiid. Like, I mean, Embiid less so now. Like, especially during these kind of MVP level years, it's pretty rare that he has these kind of games. But they have gotten up for all of the big games recently. They've beat the Clippers. They beat the Nuggets. They beat, I know the Nets didn't have KD, but like they have gotten up for the big games, which, over the course of an 82 game season is something that you want to see your team do, because it's easy to kind of sleepwalk through a ton of shit. But once again, some things are fundamental issues, and it's up to the team and the stars of that team to kind of, and the coach to, like, yeah, we will definitely beat the Knicks in a playoff series. I will gladly put money on that. And I actually think the Knicks are a nice team, but like,
right.
I don't know. In the first round of the playoffs, when the Sixers are, I know it's a better Eastern Conference, but like, they don't even have a Trae Young level star. Like Julius Randle's nice, but like, he's a fringe all-star. Jalen Brunson's nice, but he's a sub all-star. Like, if Joel Embiid and James Harden are healthy for that series, there's no reason that they should not beat the Knicks.
Yeah, tonight you got a good Julius Randle game. In that fourth quarter, he was making some shots that I'm like, Julius Randle doesn't make these shots. The driving, throwing the ball, left-handed, running hook shot, banks it in. Like some of those, and some of the quick trigger threes that he takes. I call him left-handed Russell Westbrook a lot. He wants to be the star and take the big shots, and he shoots the Knicks out of games all the time. So yeah, I think Julius Randle is a deficit on a team in the NBA. I just do. I know he can put up numbers, but when you really watch the Knicks and when it comes down to the fourth quarter and how they lose a ton of close games, a lot of it is always Julius Randle hogging the ball and trying to be a superstar. I'm not worried about a team with Julius Randle on it. That's just how I
like
feel
I
about
said,
him. And then we
in a follow-up comment.
And oh really, was he?
He
He probably was trolling. I mean, but I was thinking that though throughout this game, like these kind of teams that again can out rebound us and out hustle us and stuff. Will we struggle with a team like this in the playoffs? But when I really think about it, yeah, my answer would be no. Also, and we gave up a season high to Evan Fournier.
That was really what killed me during the stream. I was like, if Brunson goes off, okay. If Grimes goes off, quickly goes off, I can live with any of the Randall, whoever. Just Evan Fournier hitting 4 threes.
Why has he been a Sixers killer his whole career? I swear to God, this guy won't go away. It doesn't matter what team he plays for. It's always Evan Fournier.
Sixers fans think he's good because he's been particularly good against Sixers, and he's like not good at all. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I should preface that with he's good enough, or at least was good enough in the prime years of his career. He's a little bit older now, but he should not be able to play. The Sixers should not be able to allow him to get to that point. Especially the most frustrating part of that game to me was the fact that they weren't even attacking him on defense, and he has been known for being one of the most attackable defenders on switches in the NBA for like 3 years now. It's how Harden killed him in the Celtics series 2 years ago when he was on the Nets.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Sixers lose. It is what it is. It's you get to the second half of the season and we start to look at playoff seeding, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It was annoying, and one of those Magic losses was also annoying, but I think we'll see what this team looks like after the trade deadline is going to give me a lot more, be able to assess it a lot better than right now, because they have the same deficiency right now that I knew they had. And it's always gonna come out against certain matchups, the backup center thing, and the just how much they fall off when Joel Embiid sits. So we'll see what they look like after the trade deadline. But before we get up out of here, I want to ask you this as just a general question with this team and where they are right now in the past couple of years. I personally, first of all, think the worst thing that could happen to the Sixers is getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and losing, because I think then Doc Rivers gets credit for getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then he's still here for a couple more years, and he's going to do what he's going to do. It's just what I think about Doc Rivers. I have no faith really in a Doc Rivers led basketball team unless they have overpowering star makeup on their roster like that 2008 Boston Celtics team.
For future Hall of Famers, including Prime, KG, and Pierce.
So yeah. So if they don't get out of the second round, Doc's 100% gone, right?
I mean,
there's just no way
they would. Who are they losing to in the second round? Are they losing to Boston or Milwaukee?
I don't think it should matter.
I think that is so. I've been saying all season, the only way Doc is here as head coach next year is if they make the conference finals or they lose a close 7-game series to Boston or Milwaukee. And honestly, I still think Doc would be gone if that were the case, only because I think that they have to re-sign Harden after the year. And Harden needs to be convinced that Doc is a coach that is worthy of getting to a finals or whatever. So that's and also just generally speaking, I don't know, trading a coach or cutting a coach, firing a coach is just easier than moving a star or blowing up your roster. It's just historically been the easier move. So I would say just based on the precedent of Daryl Morey, the precedent of the NBA in general, I would be pretty surprised if Doc is the coach next year unless they make it to the conference finals. But if they lose to anyone but Boston or Milwaukee in the playoffs, he's gone immediately. I think he would be fired the next day. I don't think it would be if they lost to the Cavs, it's over. If they lose to the fucking Nets somehow or the Heat again, it's over. They have to have at least 1 or 2 good playoff series wins with Doc for him to stay around. And honestly, I still do think they can beat anyone in the East but Boston. I'm just convinced Boston is going to be a bad matchup, and I think that they're the best team 1 through 8, and that we're not going to be able to match up with their depth. And honestly, Jason Tatum is just always going to be a fucking pain in the ass for us.
Yep.
I think that they can beat any other team. Milwaukee is going to be really tough. I think that they would need to get some luck in a Milwaukee series to win, whether it's injury or shooting luck or whatever it is. I think that they would need some serious luck on their side. But those are the only team I think they can't beat in the East is Boston, and I think that they can at least compete or beat with everyone else.
Yeah, that's a good question, Dodo. Thanks for throwing that comment out there, because that kind of feeds off of the topic that we were just on. Basically, if the Sixers lose in the second round, is Doc Rivers still here? I think I don't know how much pressure from the fan base Joshua Harris cares about. You know what I mean? That's a thing for me too. I know the fans would be irate. They would be fire Doc, throwing protests down the street. Does Josh Harris care what the fans think? Josh Harris only cares what the fans think when the money starts to go down, because that's just what they are. They invest in a basketball team. Their goal is to make a profit. You invested in the basketball team when they were terrible. You sold the hope of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, on and on and on, so you could jack up the ticket prices, make your profit. That's what it is. So when you start to get to this end of the process thing, and, Scott O'Neal and some other guys already sold their shares. They were like, this might go up in flames now. I got to get out before my stocks go down versus where they're at right now. So I do think if he starts to see a bleak future, with the fan base being angry about where the team is at, then he would move on from Doc Rivers. I can't see them losing in the second round and Doc Rivers being here the next season. I just absolutely can't see that happening. Even if it's the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks, I just could not imagine we lose in the second round again. We're supposed to be a championship level contender. We have Joel Embiid. We have James Harden. We lose in the second round again. The coach would have to be gone. If they lose in the second round and he's back here next year, I might take a year off from covering the Sixers. I'm so serious. I don't think I can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point. I also, just back to the Embiid point, I mean, look, everything that's been said by media and like people with real inside information, Joel doesn't want to leave. And Joel wants to be a Bradley Beal. He wants to be a Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, Dirk Nowitzki. He wants to be that guy that plays for one team for his whole career. But at a certain point, age, if the team runs out of resources, if Harden ages out, if they just don't really have enough pieces to put around him, it's something that the team's really gonna have to start thinking about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where do we want to go with this? And once again, firing the coach is the easiest way to sell that to your star players. Someone said in the comments, oh, does Harden hate Doc? No, Harden doesn't necessarily hate Doc, but how do you convince someone to come back after you flamed out in the second round again? Like, you have to have something that's different. You have to have a philosophical difference in your approach to the game. And Doc is not going to have that. He never will change his philosophy. He is who he is as a coach. And the way that you sell it to Embiid and Harden and whoever is that. And then at a certain point, it's possible that, maybe Embiid gets sick of losing in the second round and he asks out, or they have to trade him, or whatever it is. But for now, I don't know. I think that the team, I think they need to make one or two upgrades. And I think that the most likely outcome is probably losing in the second round again, but they have potential to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and Finals if things break their way.
Yeah, I think you could, and I think us saying that a lot of things have to go right to get to the NBA Finals can be applied to any NBA team, any professional sports team, any team. A lot of things have to go right to get to the finals. You have to stay healthy. In basketball, your shots have to go in versus rimming out. I mean, there's there's a lot of fortune involved. There's a lot of fortune involved in the game of basketball. If you're hot shooting and you're on a roll and your momentum is there and your team chemistry is there and you're hot at the right time, you can make a run. If you can fall short the same way. I just think you got to stay healthy. You got to have these things go right. That's true, but I think it's true for any team to really reach the finals in any sport. I guess I have a hot take right now, and I've had this hot take before. If the Sixers lose in the second round this season, I don't think they would blow it up, but I would ponder it if I was the GM or if I was the owner or if I was in charge. I would ponder it because you're capped out. You don't have a lot to work with as far as trying to change the roster drastically. James is 33. I would ponder it. And also for me, watching the same thing for 4 years, whatever it is, the Doc Rivers thing or just not getting there, it gets boring for me. I'd be fine with starting over. I'd be ready to go. I'd be ready to get on tankathon.com and start watching the top of the draft. I'd be ready to go. I'd have more things to talk about. It would be more. I don't know. I'm getting bored. If they lose again in the second round, I'm bored with the Sixers. That's where
you got to really lean into the tank if you want to do another process, because they already sent out their 25 and 27 first round picks.
Oh God!
But they're top 5 protected. They're top 5 protected both years, I believe.
So you really got a tank.
You can't be mediocre. You have to be bad, or you have to want to compete. But I'll leave it on this. We went through a lot to get to this point, and it does suck. It feels like they might have missed their opportunity or their window to kind of create a deep enough team that has the right pieces around these guys. Just kind of a ton of whiffs over and over, whether it's on talent evaluation or selling on a guy too early like Jeremy Grant, or missing out on the Jimmy Butler thing after 1 year, whatever it is. The only thing I could see if they go, the only way they're blowing it up is if Joel Embiid requests a trade. That's it. Bottom line. They're not going to blow it up without that. But
no, you're right. Yeah, and that could also be very possible. He could be
100%. That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
But the only other thing I think that what would be, other than firing Doc, which is just like your natural fire the coach because you need to sell your stars and your team on a new idea, is if Tyrese Maxey's value is still what it could be, which who knows what it is right now in terms of a trade. Maxey and Tobias' expiring contract, and then you can trade after the season. If you remove protections from the picks that you already have sent out, you could trade 2 first-round picks for a star. So you could trade your 29 pick and your 31 pick, which maybe those have no value because they're way too far out and no one gives a shit. But it's possible, and it's possible that, I mean, dude, we just saw in the span of 1 year, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, a number of guys moving teams. And it happens every offseason. So I'm not saying I don't think they could be in the conversation for Kevin Durant. I just don't think they have enough. And I also don't think that the Nets would like the optics of making that trade because of the Harden thing and because of the division thing and whatever. But if there is a Paul George, Jimmy Butler, a lower level superstar-ish player that asks out after the season, then that's kind of your last move. And maybe those guys are too old, to be honest, to even go after. But if there's anyone that's out there that you could potentially pursue, you kind of have to look at that option, because otherwise then Embiid's the clock is really ticking if they lose again this year.
Yeah, and we have to kind of accelerate the clock a little bit too with being a 285-pound, 7'1", monster. It sucks and people don't want to think that, but 29 years old, I don't want to predict anything, but it could be 32, 33. It could be clearly, the end of his career. Realistically, could be at that age for Joel Embiid. Now, I do think his game, if he stays healthy, is going to age well because he can shoot. He doesn't rely necessarily on like high flying athleticism and things like that, where a lot of players, like a Russell Westbrook or whoever else you want to throw out there, that once the athleticism starts to slow down, he can't rely on an outside shot to keep his game going. But yeah, that's where I'm at with it, with the Embiid thing and this team, and if they lose again in the second round and all of those things. Let's go there before we get out of here with the Kyrie Irving thing. We might as well. I'd like to get your opinion on the situation. I personally, when they signed Durant and Kyrie, and I said right away, those two together, it's a disaster. It's not going to work. And they've gotten along a lot better than I thought they were going to get along. I said in 2 weeks, these guys are going to be fighting on the sideline. And then they trade the farm for James Harden. And I thought that was just the most ridiculous thing to do. Like seriously ridiculous when you think about it. Who makes the decision to do that? There's only one ball. It doesn't make sense really to give up all of your depth.
Also, but if Harden doesn't get hurt and Kyrie doesn't get hurt, we're probably talking about a championship level team.
I didn't think so. They were terrible defensively, and I don't think they were deep enough. I just don't.
They were up
I don't.
2-0 in the Bucks series, and the Bucks won the title.
It's true. But
the Hawks would have been waiting for them in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Suns were waiting for them in the finals if they win.
That's true. That road to the championship.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That was, by the way, might be even more Mickey Mouse than the actual Mickey Mouse ring that was won in Disney. But it is. We're probably talking about them as champions if both Harden and Kyrie don't get hurt. So, you could look at it as both sides. I personally thought it was a fine move at the time. I just thought that pushing in all your chips is not the worst move in the world when you have one of the 5 best players on the planet. And look, it didn't work out. It was a gamble they took. But I don't know. I think that we're looking at the results of it now, and I really think they should have won the title that year.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Something just always seems to happen when you have Kyrie Irving on your team. Something just always seems to happen. Cancer Kyrie, as I call him. And this time, why do you think he requested a trade anyway? He requested a trade last year, and it didn't happen. And he just does it again. And this time, the Nets were like, "All right, we're kind of over the Kyrie thing. Let's just get what we can for him." And I don't know how you feel about what they got for him. But yeah, it's just Kyrie Irving to me. He's such a polarizing player because he's one of the best scorers I've ever seen in my life. He just does amazing things on the court. He's a magician, but he just doesn't care. He just doesn't care about basketball, and his focus is on other things, and it's been that for a while. So what do you do? What do you do with Kyrie? So they decide to pull the trigger and trade him. And then the dynamic of the experiment now in Dallas with Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. What do you think about that also?
So, Kyrie, yeah, definitely true. I mean, Kyrie's just you never know what you're going to get. He changes his mind every 5 minutes, which is something that is being under discussed here. That a week or 2 ago, he said that he wanted to sign an extension and play the rest of his career with the Nets, and then within a week requested a trade and got a trade. So I don't really know what you do. He's an amazing, amazing talent. And as I said, a magician, probably one of the most aesthetically pleasing players to watch basketball.
Such a good way to put it, dude. Such a good way to put it. So the clips of him in like slow motion, just like gliding down the court, and then the Euro up and under, like English off the glass. Yeah, you're right.
He has the greatest handle I've ever seen, and he is once again a magician. Having said that, it's really tough to win with a guy that isn't bought all the way into what you're doing. And it is a massive risk of the Dallas Mavericks to take right now, to trade for a guy halfway through a season when he's expiring at the end of the year. Just as we said, he's completely unpredictable. Now, he does have a relationship with Jason Kidd. He does have a relationship with Nico Harrison, their GM, who used to work for Nike and knew him through there. So there's at least that. And I think that he has a respect of Luka, but because of the fact that he didn't get that extension, like the guy's saying in the comments right now, he didn't get that extension last summer, and then he didn't get the full extension this time. He basically said, you know what, I want to move on. That's the reason why he forces the trade. I don't really blame the Nets for not wanting to give him the extension. Like,
no, I don't either.
How do you commit yourself to someone who has not committed to you? Like that's my whole thing with this situation. I don't blame them. Overall, I think for the circumstances, both teams, because I think everyone's going to look at it through the Nets perspective, because this could effectively end the window with KD, for a championship.
Oh yeah.
But also, you kind of have to look at it from the Mavs perspective too, where I really think there's a real possibility that Luka could have been the next star to ask out, and they were willing to take the risk to get a talent like Kyrie in the building to say, fuck it, let's at least make a move this year that will put us in the conversation for the championship. Because right now we're not in it. It's Luka, a bunch of role players, and the second Luka gets hurt, everything kind of falls apart. So I do think that it is a calculated risk, and they didn't give up that much, although 2 starting level players in a first round pick isn't nothing. From a team that already had defensive issues, to lose Dorian Finney-Smith, by far their best defender, and a very valuable 3-and-D player as a wing, it's going to be tough for sure. Spencer Dinwiddie, obviously you just replace Spencer Dinwiddie with Kyrie Irving and you're way better. That's just kind of the reality if he stays on the court. And this version of Spencer Dinwiddie, I should say. He's a little bit older. He's not quite the player he once was. But from the Nets perspective, you have a guy who was basically trying to ruin the team for years, asked out right before his contract expires, and you get back at least 2 rotation players and a future first-round pick. And I don't think the Nets are done. I think they're going to try to make the trade this week that either gets Ben Simmons out of there and gets back role players, if they include 2 first-round picks, to send that out, or they try to make a move where they move one of the guys they got in that trade. They expand the trade until basically so that they can move on from that guy and include picks in that, and then make an improvement as well. So I don't think the Nets are done, and I think that the Mavs and Nets were just kind of both in unfortunate circumstances and made the best of it.
Well, and Kevin Durant, who's publicly spoken out about the roster around him at a certain point this season, he was like, everybody expects us to win and me to lead the team, but look who I'm playing with. And I don't know if I've ever heard a player just say that about his team publicly before. Does Kevin Durant stay around for all of those things happening? You know what I mean? Or in the next 48 hours, do we get a Kevin Durant trade also? You know what I mean? Because I don't see Kevin Durant. If he wasn't happy in the beginning of the season, now Kyrie's gone. I don't think Durant is a big fan of the Ben Simmons situation. I don't think either of them were. I think Kyrie hated it. Kyrie, the one thing I really liked about Ben going there was I knew Kyrie Irving was going to yell at him. And I knew it. And I was like, finally he's going somewhere where somebody's going to yell at him, shoot the damn ball.
Yep.
And it happened a couple of times where you could literally hear it, on TV, and that was great for me. I've wanted that to happen for a long time. It should always happen. Let's not hide what
Sure.
Shoot the ball, So, but Durant being left there with Ben, does Durant say, "Hey guys, do I actually have to say trade me too? Trade me too, bro? I'm out of here." Also, and with the Ben Simmons trade, you have to throw in first round picks because nobody's taking that contract for a 6'11" screen setter. It's
Sure.
just,
Yeah, I mean, the idea that we've been talking about is like, can you just get Jakob Poeltl and Josh Richardson from the Spurs and send 2 first-round picks with Ben Simmons? At least you get 2 rotation players that you can somewhat trust in the playoffs. Like, I mean, you can't trust Ben at all. He's faking an injury. Like that's what's happening right now. Like, they made him get an MRI and it came back clean. Like, I don't really know. Like, and as you said, KD's not interested. I would say it's funny because I keep saying, oh, there's no way KD gets traded in season. But I also thought the same thing about Harden last year. And I also thought the same thing about Kyrie as of 3 days ago. So you just never know with the Nets. Now, there are going to be a lot of offers out there. I actually think this is going to screw up the trade market because I think the teams that were in on guys like OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam are just going to be like, we'll wait until the summer and see if we can get Kevin Durant instead.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's unfortunate for the Toronto Raptors, but I personally think that they'll probably just be like, look, we're going to put the best team around you we can possible this year, and then we'll talk about it again in the offseason if it doesn't work out. And who knows? Durant might just say no, trade me now, and we see Durant on another team, and it shakes up the entire league again.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out in a couple of days. So hey, this is one of the most fun times of the NBA, man. Right around the trade deadline, it's just absolute craziness.
Yeah, so
that was fun today.
So I just want to say, if you are interested, follow my page. On the day of the trade deadline, we're streaming for 7 hours. So I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I'm gonna stream until the deadline. Wow. So we're gonna be going 7 hours long. Ball with Troll Bro Dude. Follow us on YouTube and Playback. We're gonna be going on there.
Yeah, I'll put the links in the description to Ball podcast and the YouTube channel and everything for those that want to follow that 7-hour stream. Or pop in whenever, and he'll be up, the whole day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. But anyway, man, hey, look, thanks for coming in, Troll Bro Dude. Again, this was fun. It's always fun, man. We'll do it again. The Sixers lose to the Knicks, and we're gonna have a better assessment of this team after Thursday. We'll see what they do.
Let's get it. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, brother. Take it easy. Later, everybody. Hit the like button.